So in today's podcast, I want to continue the train of thought which I was exploring in last week's podcast, which was called The Mathematical Conundrum of Religion. Now, if you haven't managed to have a listen to that particular podcast, you can have a listen on any of the major podcast platforms such as Spotify, or you could go over to my YouTube channel, or indeed any of the other platforms which I use to post my content. So as I said, I want to continue what I was presenting the last time on that. Now, in summary, what I was discussing on that podcast was the fact that most people in this world, their belief or beliefs are underpinned by blind faith. In other words, whichever household they're born into, they are conditioned to believe that their religion is the only religion that will allow them to walk the straight path, the right path, that will help them to achieve paradise. Most people in this world, my observation is that they believe in that way, blind faith. And therefore, I explored the idea on the podcast that therefore it is pot luck. It is just pot luck whether you actually achieve paradise. Because it just depends on which household you happen to be born into. It's just luck. Now, the mathematical conundrum was that therefore there's a very, very low probability that you will actually achieve paradise. Because in the example I gave, where there were 3 people, there was actually only then a 1/3 chance that you were actually born into the religion that would take you to paradise. Only 1/3. And I want to touch on that a bit further. And I want then to talk a little bit about what the next podcast is going to bring, because I think that's going to be potentially quite explosive. And I think I can already anticipate the sort of reactions I'm going to get to it, but I want to present that to you in this podcast anyway, in terms of my plan. Now, in terms of this mathematical conundrum and the improbability of most people actually being born into the right religion, one of you rightly pointed out in the comments to the podcast, the probability is actually lower than 1/3. The example I gave was of 3 people and 3 households. So it's a very small sample. And within that sort of situation, I presented there's only 1/3 chance that one of them would actually then therefore go to heaven. Now, in the real world, there are, of course, so many different religions. And therefore, your probability of being born into the right, correct faith, religion, is actually much lower. It's 1 divided by the number of religions and different faiths, if you take them as mutually exclusive. So, if that is the case, then you should have a quite a worrying outlook as to whether you would actually achieve paradise. So firstly, thanks to my friend Seriously Cold, which is a pseudonym my friend uses, for pointing that out, that the actual mathematical probability in that case is very, very low. Oh, and by the way, one thing I did forget to state, that within each of the religions there are also subdivisions, sects. For example, in Islam you have Shia, Sunnis, Ahmadis, many, many others, and each of them claims that the other is wrong. Sunnis will say that Ahmadis aren't even Muslim. Shias and Muslims will be fighting each other, and even Sunnis are divided then into different sects, and they have their own separate mosques. They want to pray separately, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Just coming back to the probability of you attaining paradise, then it is very, very small. It's very close to 0 if you believe that it is okay to have blind faith in the religion that's practiced by the household in which you were born. Okay, so I also said on the podcast that, and at the end I left you with a comment. I left with the comment that you have to explore the possibility, given this low probability, that perhaps none of the religions are correct, and that none will actually help you to achieve paradise. Now that's quite a shocking comment. I know a lot of you will be listening to this and thinking, this person's lost it. But it's an actual fact that a number of people who decide to think about this and they consider what the purpose of their lives are, they do leave all the religions. And what they do, and this is the point I want to touch upon, they become atheists. They actually lose faith in the existence of God because they don't know what to choose out of all the religions. It's just too confusing. It's too much of an effort to try and find out which religion is the correct one. Each one is claiming to be the right one. And so they decide that none of it's for them. And let me tell you, this is based on the fact that I've been putting out content for the last couple of years now on my journey through the study of the Qur'an. Many people who respond to my studies and my videos which I put out, or comments I put out, many people have asked me whether I'm an atheist, whether I actually don't believe in God. And so, let me make that clear first of all. I'm not an atheist. I have developed an utter conviction through using my mind, through using observation, using the senses that I have as a human to develop utter faith and conviction that God exists. And so I'm not an atheist. Now, the one thing that is really important to try and recognize, and I know it's very difficult for many, that if there's a possibility that all of the religions that are practiced by most people in this world, that if all of them are false, the alternative is not atheism, or it's not necessarily atheism. It's possible that the way of life that God has prescribed upon mankind is not consistent with any of the religions which are practiced, and is something else entirely. And this is described very clearly in the Qur'an through many verses. And one of those, for example, is chapter 42, verse 13. Please do go open up the Qur'an and have a look at this verse. As you know, I always say on all of my videos that when I'm giving a reference to any verse from the Qur'an, I strongly encourage you to open the Qur'an and have a look, because if not, you will be blindly following me, and that's wrong. The whole point of this is to think. If you look at the concept of this channel, it says Qur'an study for those who think. Okay, so open the Qur'an, if not now then later, and have a look at 42:13. In that, and this is just a summary, Allah makes it very clear that what He has prescribed for mankind through all the different prophets that have been appointed over time, they presented a deen. Okay, deen. And Allah says in 42:13 that we should not have been divided into religions. Think about that. And there are many other verses in the Qur'an where Allah is telling mankind to be unified, and He is warning us against being divided. So the alternative to religion is not atheism. It doesn't mean that there does not exist a God. It doesn't mean that we should give up with exploring for the truth and identifying the truth. So that's the point about atheism and my observation about how some people have reacted to the divisions that we see underpinned by the concept of religion and blind faith. The last thing I will say is just a bit of a plan. So in the next podcast, I plan to continue with this thought process. We started with the mathematical conundrum. Today we spoke about that further in terms of how low the probability is that you will go to heaven if you blindly believe in the religion that you were born into, or the sect that you were born into. We spoke about atheism. Now, in terms of the next podcast, what I want to talk about then is the concept of Muslim. I want to talk about my observation of the boundaries which define the person that is known as a Muslim in order for that person to be called or known as a Muslim. So I want to talk about that identity, the Muslim identity, and the boundaries around that. And I know that many people who will be listening to that podcast will be offended. However, like I said, if I would invite you to listen to it with an open mind and leave me comments. Let me know what you think. And until then, I wish you all peace.